I was abandoned in a motel room with my baby, then a millionaire changed everything for us. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick with despair. My heart pounded in my chest as I looked down at my tiny girl, Emma, sleeping soundly despite the chaos surrounding us. The flickering neon light outside painted the room in shades of blue and green, casting eerie shadows across the peeling wallpaper. The smell of stale cigarettes mixed with the faint scent of baby powder. I tried to breathe, but my chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing the very life out of me. How did it come to this? Just hours before, I had been sitting in a warm kitchen, laughter echoing off the walls. My mother's hands were soft as she dough kneaded for our family's favorite recipe. But everything changed that fateful morning. I had hoped for a fresh start in this city, leaving behind the suffocating weight of expectations, but instead I found myself here, alone and terrified. The door creaked open, and a cold gust of wind blew through the room. I shivered, pulling Emma closer, her frail body trembling against the fabric of my worn-out shirt. The silence was deafening. I could hear my heart thumping in rhythm with Emma's gentle breaths. A single tear rolled down my cheek, a palpable reminder of my situation. Abandoned. Rejected. Left to fend for myself in a world that felt too big, too menacing. That I thought of Matthew, my boyfriend. The one who promised to be there for me. But where was he now? The truth crammed itself into my throat like a bitter pill. He had put his dreams above ours. I was left clutching to the remnants of our once bright future like a lifeline. Anxiety clawed at my insides. Were my dreams over? Would I ever escape this prison? As I held Emma, her dark curls brushing against my chin, I felt a spark of hope. What if a miracle could happen? What if someone walked through that door and transformed everything? My thoughts spiraled into a whirlpool of what-ifs and maybes. And then it hit me like a lightning bolt. I was desperate. Desperate enough to seek help from a world I'd never imagined I'd need to embrace. Just then, the door swung open, revealing a tall figure silhouetted against the corridor light. I squinted through the sudden brightness, praying for a savior. The figure stepped forward, a man in an immaculate suit, hair slicked back, a stranger who didn't belong in this rundown paradise. His eyes scanned the room, landing on me and Emma. I swallowed hard, fear and curiosity crashing inside me like waves. What are you doing here? He asked, his voice deep and smooth, laced with authority. I didn't know how to answer. Who was he? What did he want? My heart raced as the questions tumbled in my mind. But as he took another step forward, something in my gut shifted. This man was different. He had the presence of someone who could change everything, but at what cost? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The stranger's gaze bore into me, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. The world outside seemed to fade as I focused on him, waiting for an explanation, an offer, a lifeline. But all I could muster was a frantic glance at Emma, who rested peacefully, seemingly oblivious to the turmoil surrounding us. Are you in trouble? He asked, his voice suddenly softer, more genuine. It pierced through the haze of fear thickened by desperation that I straightened my back as if bracing against a wave of anxiety that threatened to pull me under. I just need help. We need help, I stammered, my voice wavering under the weight of my vulnerability. I thought of my mother, the way she had taken care of me, and how I had promised myself to always take care of my daughter. Yet here I was, adrift in this broken motel room, my heart heavy with despair. The man's expression shifted from stern to sympathetic, and he stepped closer. My name is Alexander, he said, offering a hand. What's your name? I hesitated, scanning his face for signs of deceit. He looked sincere, but then again, appearances could be deceiving. With a deep breath, I replied, Lily. It felt like a lifetime since I had spoken my name with any sense of pride. What happened? His brow furrowed, concern etched across his strong features that I was left abandoned, I whispered. Each word felt like a weight lifting, though the fear of revealing too much made my heart race faster. My boyfriend promised we'd build a life together, but when I needed him most, he was gone. The words tumbled out, raw and thick with emotion. Alexander's face softened, his eyes shimmering with understanding. There was a stillness in the room, a shared recognition of pain that wrapped around us like a fragile blanket. I can help you, he said finally, his voice steady and calm. But I need you to trust me, even if it feels hard. Trust. It was a concept I had nearly forgotten in the storm of my recent experiences. Could I place my fate in the hands of this stranger? Yet, looking down at Emma, I was reminded of the love that bound us together, the fierce desire to protect her at any cost. That as I mulled over his offer, the room felt suffocating again. The neon light cast unsettling shadows that danced across the walls, reminding me of anywhere but here. Why would you help us? I managed to ask, my voice betraying the trembling hope rising in my chest. Alexander sighed, his expression thoughtful. Because I know what it's like to be surrounded by darkness, feeling helpless and lost. Allowing someone to help you doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're human. There was a sincerity in his words, a rare glimmer of kindness that briefly lit the shadows in my mind. Tears prickled behind my eyes, a mix of gratitude and profound sadness. Despite the uncertainty swirling around me, a flicker of hope ignited within my broken spirit. Maybe he could help us find a way out, back to a semblance of normalcy. Just then, a knock echoed from the door. It was abrupt and hard, jolting me from my thoughts. Alexander's expression shifted, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. Stay here, he said as he moved toward the door, his posture suddenly tensed. As he opened it, my heart raced. I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom, like the shadows lurking in the corners might swallow us whole. I held my breath, hugging Emma closer, praying that whatever was outside wouldn't threaten our fragile moment of hope. Let's talk, came a low voice, familiar, mocking. My heart plummeted as I squinted into the hall to see Matthew standing there, his expression a twisted mix of anger and resignation. I hadn't expected to see him again. You think you can just run away and hide? His tone was gruff, but behind it lay desperation and something darker. A surge of protective instinct rushed through me. My heart hammered painfully. What are you doing here, Matthew? He stepped forward, pushing past Alexander, who immediately squared his shoulders, standing between us like a protective wall. I came to find you. You can't just take off with my baby, your baby. The words spilled from my lips like venom. You left me. You abandoned us. His eyes darkened, and I could see the turmoil twisting within him. I was working to give us a better life, Lily. It wasn't supposed to be like this, but he didn't understand. I could feel the tension in the room thickening, a palpable fear binding us in place. I wanted to scream, to push him away, to protect Emma from the man who had promised me the world but had turned his back when the storms hit. Alexander's voice cut through the atmosphere like a blade, firm and determined. You need to leave. You're not welcome here. Matthew's gaze flickered to Alexander, a dangerous spark of challenge lighting in his eyes. Who the hell are you? The tension reached a boiling point as I held my breath, unsure of what would happen next. I could feel Emma stirring in my arms, sensing the rising conflict, instinctively leaning into me. Just go, Matthew, I implored, my voice quaking. I felt the weight of choice settling around my shoulders. It was time to make a stand, not just for myself, but for Emma's future, but the look in Matthew's eyes told me he wasn't just going to back down. You don't get to choose this, Lily. You can't just walk away from me, from us. And with those words, my heart sank into an abyss of uncertainty as the battle for our future loomed over us. In that suspended moment, I realized I was at a crossroads. The choices I made in the next few moments could change everything. Would Alexander be my ally, or would he become yet another complication in my already chaotic life? And how far would Matthew go to reclaim what he believed was his? As despair tangled with hope in my heart, the uncertain shadows deepened, and I knew that my fight was just beginning. The silence that fell was thick, a suffocating blanket that draped over the room and muted even the soft whimpers of Emma beside me. My heart pounded against my ribcage, a wild creature desperate for escape. The sight of Matthew, filled with both anger and desperation, stirred old wounds I thought I had begun to heal. Suddenly, I was not only a mother fighting for her child but a woman stuck between two opposing forces, each representing a different kind of life, one I had once dreamed of and another I had yet to dare hope for. Lily, Matthew pressed, his voice lowering, taking on that familiar, almost pleading tone he often wore when he wanted to convince me of his twisted version of love. You can't just throw everything away. You can't take Emma from her father. The word father hung between us like a bitter truth. Yes, he was her father, but the man standing in front of me had crumbled, leaving me to piece together my shattered dreams and raise our daughter alone in a world that felt endlessly dark. You say that as if you've ever taken responsibility for her. You left us. I felt a fierce heat rising in my chest, igniting the embers of my anger, my pain. Can't you see? He continued, stepping closer, teeth gritted as though to push back the turmoil within. I was working for you as I did it for you. For our future. You don't understand what I was trying to do. For a brief breath, the revelation twisted my mind. Was I really the villain in this distorted fairy tale? Yet, in the core of my heart, I knew that his reasons, however noble he believed them to be, hadn't changed what he had done. Trust evaporated faster than smoke in the wind. My love, once a warm light, had turned bitter and cold. Matthew, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady, you want me to talk about futures? Talk to Emma. What future do you think she sees when you abandon her for weeks on end? For what? So you can chase dreams without her. His expression faltered, and for the briefest moment, uncertainty flickered in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by the fire of defiance. You don't know what it's like to struggle. I was doing what I had to do. I wanted to scream, to shake him and make him understand. But just like that, he dismissed my pain, robbing me of my voice, as he had done so many times before. And how is burdening us with your absence supposed to mean anything other than that you're running? The words tasted bitter in my mouth, and I stood, boldly pushing the feelings of fear and doubt aside. Did I end my absence? He shot back, his voice rising. You're the one who's running now. Running away from reality. From everything we built together. I'm not running. In trying to survive, just then, a stark reality wrapped around me like a sudden chill. I had been holding on to my anger, my past, but in doing that, I was risking losing my present. I could see Emma staring wide-eyed, sensing the undercurrents of fear and dread swirling around her. At that moment, the chaos around me faded, and the urgency to protect her reignited. Enough. Alexander's voice sliced through the heated exchange, as he stepped forward with a commanding presence that left no room for hesitation. You need to leave, Matthew. You can't force your way back into their lives. You've already made your choices. Matthew's face contorted with rage before settling into something dangerously calm. This isn't over, Lily, he warned, his eyes narrowing. You're going to regret this. I will fight for my daughter. With that, he turned, storming out of the room, the door slamming shut behind him with a finality that echoed in my heart. My breath hitched, a mix of relief and uncertainty washing over me as I turned to Alexander, whose presence felt like a lighthouse amidst the storm. Are you okay? He asked softly, concern etching his features as he stepped closer. I shook my head, tears finally streaming down my face like an overdue waterfall. No, I'm not okay. I thought I hoped had changed. His hand found mine, warm and reassuring. It's going to be okay, Lily. I know it sounds hollow right now, but you're stronger than you realize. You've fought through so much already. The comfort of his words wrapped around me like a security blanket, and I let myself lean into that moment, even as a nagging voice buried deep in my chest whispered doubt. Could I truly trust him? Could I let someone new piece together dreams I had nearly given up on? The strain of the entire situation washed over me, and behind it all lingered a raw vulnerability I hadn't allowed myself to feel. I couldn't run from the shadows of my choices, nor could I ignore the pain that clung to my heart like an old friend. But as Alexander tightened his grip on my hand, something shifted. A flicker of hope ignited in a corner of my heart, one that whispered that maybe the path ahead wasn't just bleak. "Thank you," I murmured, grateful for his steadfastness amidst my chaos. "For being here." Just then, a muffled sound from outside captured our attention and pulled me back into reality. My heart raced as I glanced toward the door, fear creeping back in as I contemplated the distance Matthew might take in his attempts to find us. What if he comes back? "All we can do is be prepared," Alexander replied, his voice steady. "You're not alone in this." And then there was a knock again, harder this time. My pulse quickened as Alexander's expression hardened. I could feel the shift. This was more than just the chaos of my past. I had no idea what was waiting on the other side of that door. "Stay behind me," he instructed, moving cautiously toward it. My heart raced, the room felt claustrophobic. I held my breath, wrapping my arms around Emma as I wondered what awaited us: hope, danger, or perhaps a new, shattering revelation. As Alexander reached for the doorknob, an insistent dread clawed at my insides. I could feel it, something was about to change, and whatever it was, it could either save us or push us deeper into uncertainty. The door swung open slowly, the hinges creaking like an old man awakening from a long slumber. My breath caught in my throat, and the air around us thickened like a heavy fog. Standing there, silhouetted against the dim hallway light, was someone I hadn't expected to see. It wasn't Matthew, as my anxious heart had feared. Instead, it was a stranger, a woman with striking features and an air of confidence that was both alluring and intimidating. "Lily," she said, her voice smooth and commanding as she stepped into the room without waiting for an invitation. "I'm here to help." I echoed, glancing at Alexander, who wore a puzzled expression. Emma squirmed in my arms, sensing the tension brewing again. "Yes," the woman continued, her gaze shifting to Alexander with an inexplicable recognition. "But first, we need to talk privately." I could feel the prickles of anxiety crawling up my spine. "Who are you?" I demanded, clutching Emma tighter, as if her small body could shield me from any unforeseen danger that loomed just beyond this woman's intentions. "My name is Beatrice. I'm a family lawyer." She offered a small, almost reassuring smile. "I came to discuss your rights regarding Matthew." "Family lawyer?" I was caught off guard. The idea of legal battles felt like a storm I had been desperately trying to evade. "You can't be serious." "I just want him to stop dragging us into his chaos." "Exactly," Beatrice replied firmly, like a pillar of strength amid the uncertainties swirling around us. "And that's why I'm here. You need to be prepared. Matthew is not going to make this easy." My heart sank at the mention of his name. Just the thought of his presence loomed like a shadow over my fragile attempts at peace. "I thought I had already made it clear I didn't want him involved in our lives." Beatrice stepped closer, her expression shifting to one of empathy. "I understand, and I know this is overwhelming. But you deserve to know the full extent of what you're up against. Matthew is fighting for rights he feels entitled to. This isn't just about his past, it's about your future with Emma." "There is no future with him," I snapped, frustration boiling just beneath the surface. "He's broken everything between us." "There's nothing, Lily," Alexander interjected gently, his eyes focused on me. "She can help. We can't ignore this. Maybe we can set some boundaries. Make it clear what we're willing to fight for." Willpower surged within me, the warmth of his conviction beginning to thaw my instinctive resistance. My fight-or-flight response battled against the potential for a solution. But what if it makes things worse? What if it only feeds his need to control? "Then we prepare for that too," Beatrice said, her voice steady. "You don't need to face this alone. I can guide you through the process. You have rights, Lily. With your permission, we can draw up a custody agreement that protects your interests." And Emma's eyes flitting between Alexander and Beatrice, I felt the flickers of hope mingling with an overwhelming tide of fear. Could this truly help us? Or would it ignite Matthew's fury, pushing him further into obsessive desperation? Somehow, I could feel the edges of my resolve splintering under the pressure of the unknown. Maybe we should think about this, I whispered, the doubt creeping back in as I stumbled through my thoughts. I just want what's best for Emma, and that starts with you taking control of your own narrative, Beatrice urged, conviction painting every syllable. You can't let him dictate your story. It's time to stand firm, but even as hope echoed in her words, anxiety clawed up my throat, leaving me suffocated in uncertainty. I hadn't been prepared for this twist, for the sudden prospect of legal battles looming ahead. My heart raced, contemplating the turbulence to come while I held on to Emma like a fragile treasure. Then, in the chaos of my swirling thoughts, my phone buzzed violently on the coffee table, causing my eyes to dart toward it. I hesitated, feeling as if the world had suddenly paused, anticipating what news might come from that screen. Answer it, Beatrice. Urged, her eyes piercing through my hesitation. It could be important. What if it's him? I rasped, dread flooding my senses. What if it's Matthew? Then you'll be ready, Alexander said softly, the weight of certainty in his voice unwavering. Just answer it. With trembling fingers, I reached for my phone, and as I tapped the screen to reveal the caller ID, my breath hitched in my throat and a dreadful realization dawned on me. The name flashing in bold letters rendered me immobile. Lily. It's Sarah, a familiar voice poured through the speaker, but it was everything that followed that sent ice through my veins. You need to come to the hospital right now. It's urgent. Matt's been in an accident. As the finality of her words sank in, the room around me began to spin, a mix of shock and horror clouding my mind. I stared into Alexander's concerned eyes, realizing that this revelation was shattering any sense of control I thought I had reclaimed. A whirlwind, a spiraling downward, and suddenly, it felt like the ground under my feet had vanished, leaving me suspended in a freefall. Confusion, fear, dread all rushing in. My world shifted yet again, it felt more precarious than ever. And in that moment, I had to decide, was I ready to confront not only Matthew's potential influence in our lives but also the fragile state of his well-being? Would I once again be artfully wading into treacherous waters, unaware of what might come to the surface? The boundaries I had begun to establish began to blur, and I was left with a desperate choice that could lead us down a path I wasn't ready to face. Panic gripped me, a vice-like hold around my chest as Sarah's voice echoed hauntingly in my ears. At that moment, every muscle in my body screamed against the notion of stepping into the chaos I had fought so hard to distance myself from. I closed my eyes, surrendering momentarily to the suffocating tide of dread threatening to consume me. Lily. Alexander's voice cut through my fogged mind. His tone was steady, but I could see the concern etched deep in his brow. The reality of the situation anchored me back to the present, forcing me to acknowledge the weight of my choices. I have to go, I finally whispered, my voice quivering. I can't leave this hanging over us. Emma stirred in my arms, sensing my turmoil, and instinctively, I unfurled my fingers to comfort her. Lily, wait, Beatrice interjected, her urgency pulling me back from the precipice. This is serious. I know your instinct is to protect Emma, but Matthew's accident could complicate things. You need to stay clear-headed. This is a highly unpredictable situation that I don't care. I shot back, the strength of my emotion surprising even me. He's still her father. I can't ignore that, no matter how much I want to. Silence enveloped the room, heavy and thick, as I grappled with the fury and resolve swirling within me. I couldn't deny the flicker of concern that ignited every time I thought of Matthew, flawed, broken, yet tied to my daughter's existence in ways I wished I could sever. Then let me come with you, Alexander suggested, and his warm, steady presence felt like a lifeline amidst the chaos. I can support you. Together, we can navigate this. But what if I faltered, feeling a rush of conflicting emotions? The very thought of facing my past while holding on to Emma felt perilous, as if I were teetering on the cusp of an abyss. Whatever happens, you won't face it alone, he assured, his gaze unwavering. A part of me wanted to pull away, to shield myself from the looming storm that was Matthew, yet another part clawed at the chance to confront this reality with Alexander by my side. "Okay," I finally said through gritted teeth, a slice of determination cutting through my uncertainty. "But we have to be cautious." Emma pulled softly at my hair, a gentle anchor that reminded me of what truly mattered. The ride to the hospital was one of palpable tension, each second ticking by heavy and slow. I grasped Emma's small form tightly as we navigated the city streets, the sounds and sights that passed us by growing blurred and distant. Alexander's warmth radiated beside me, an unwavering presence despite the daunting situation ahead. As we approached the hospital, a wave of dread crashed over me, flooding my senses with memories of laughter, arguments, and all the moments shared with Matthew that were now tainted by his choices. The emergency room door loomed ahead, bathed in harsh fluorescent light, a stark reminder of all that had been lost and what was still at stake. "Stay close," Alexander murmured, placing a gentle hand on my back, guiding me forward as we pushed through the automatic doors. Within the sterile walls, reality honed in on me with razor-sharp clarity. I could hear the bustle of nurses, the urgent voices of doctors, and the endless beeping of machines, each sound serving as an echo of the heartache that had followed me for so long. As we reached the nurse's desk, I caught sight of Sarah pacing anxiously, her brows drawn together and worry etched across her features. She spotted me, her expression shifting from anxiety to relief in an instant. "Lily," she rushed over, speaking just above a whisper. "He's stable for now." But, she hesitated, glancing back over her shoulder. "You need to talk to him when he wakes up, talk to him." My voice came out strangled, filled with confusion and dread. "What can I possibly say? He's the reason I was pulled into this chaos. I can't just forget what he did." "I know," Sarah nodded, her eyes pleading with understanding. "But this might be the only chance to make sense of it all. You fought so hard to distance yourself, but you won't find peace until you confront him and confront your feelings." My stomach churned, the weight of her words sitting heavily in my chest. Could I really face him? The anger and resentment built over years of heartbreak struggled against my innate compassion for the man who had once been my partner, the man I had loved so deeply. Before I could respond, an orderly appeared from down the corridor, his face neutral but with an air of urgency. "Are you Lily? Family member of Matthew Robinson?" I froze, dread washing over me. "Yes, that's me. His condition has improved, and he's awake," the orderly said, gesturing behind him. "You can go in, but only for a few minutes. The doctor will be in shortly." With a deep, shuddering breath, I turned to Alexander, who nodded encouragingly. "He'll be right outside," he promised softly. As I stepped through the door into Matthew's room, time seemed to stretch unnaturally. The sterile smell of antiseptics filled my nostrils, and the sight of him pale, fragile, tethered to machines struck my heart with a raw force. This was the man who had shattered my world, yet here he lay, vulnerable and broken. "Lily." His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper, but the sound of it cut through me like ice. "Matthew," I breathed out, hesitating as I took a step closer, my heart racing wildly. I didn't think I'd see you," he rasped, his gaze searching mine, a mixture of regret and something I couldn't quite place softening his features. For a moment, I felt the past rush back, the warmth of love, the bitter pain of betrayal, all blending into a haunting melody of unresolved emotions, and the overwhelming reality of being here, in this moment, battling the remnants of what we once shared collided with the present like tidal waves, dangerous, tumultuous, unyielding. "Why are you here, Matthew?" I asked, my voice trembling as I fought against the tide of regret and anger that threatened to drown me. His response caught me off guard, the honesty glimmering in his eyes. "I need to make things right, Lily. I didn't think it would take an accident to make me understand, but I promise you, everything is going to change." I felt the ground shift beneath me, the chaos within swirling into a tempest of conflicting emotions, and deep down, a familiar flicker of hope threatened to ignite just as another surprise loomed on the horizon, a truth yet to be revealed. The air in the room grew heavy with silence after Matthew's words hung between us, trembling with unspoken possibilities. I wanted to believe him, to grasp at the thread of hope he offered, but the scars of our shared past were still fresh in my mind. Change. The word slipped out before I could rein it in, laced with skepticism. You think it's that simple? You think you can just wake up and everything will magically revert to what it used to be? Matthew's expression faltered, his brow furrowing as if my words had struck a wound. I know it won't be easy, Lily. I've made mistakes. But being here, lying in this bed, I finally understand what I put you through. What I lost. His voice cracked, filled with an earnestness that pulled at my resolve. Before I could reply, a sudden commotion echoed outside the room, pulling my attention towards the door. I caught a glimpse of Alexander's worried face, and it grounded me with a reminder of the love and support that surrounded me now. I took a deep breath, focusing on the man before me. Your understanding is barely the tip of the iceberg, Matthew. You chose your life, and you left me and Emma to pick up the pieces. I felt the weight of my words, they were laden with years of pent-up hurt. You abandoned us. Matthew recoiled, the guilt evident in his features. Lily, enough. I cut him off, anger rising in me like a flame. You may be awake, but the damage has been done. Don't try to erase it with pretty words. Words won't heal the wounds you left behind. A flicker of pain crossed his face, replaced almost instantly by something else. I recognized it as vulnerability, a rawness that stirred a softening inside me. I want to help, he murmured, and there was a sincerity in his voice that made my heart trip over itself, a confusing mix of hope and danger. Help? I echoed, incredulous. What could you possibly do to help? You've been absent from our lives, and now you expect to just step back in. At that moment, I caught a glimpse of myself reflected in the glass of the window, a woman molded by hardship, clad in determination but marred by a lingering vulnerability. I wanted to shield Emma from disappointment, from another potential heartbreak. Just give me a chance, he pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. I want to prove that I can be the father she deserves. That I can be the man you need. A part of me wanted to reach out, to believe in his plea, to reclaim the threads of what we once had. But instead, I clung fiercely to my anger, the defiance of a mother unwilling to let her guard down. We were not the same people anymore. Then, without warning, a surge of doubt crashed over me. What if reaching for forgiveness meant I might lose my grip on the precious life I had built with Emma? I felt myself waver, teetering on the edge. Lily. Matthew's voice pulled me back to reality, weaving concern into my turmoil. I know I've hurt you. But there's something you need to know. The urgency in his words made the room feel small, claustrophobic. My heart raced as unease settled in my stomach. What is it? I found out some things about Emma. Things I should have known, and there's a reason why I was so careless before. Stop, I interrupted, an instinctive fear washing over me. What do you mean? He hesitated, taking a shaky breath, his eyes locked onto mine. It's not just the past, Lily. There are complications. I had reasons for my actions. That just then, the door swung open to reveal Sarah, her face ashen, and my heart dropped into my stomach. Lily, it's not just about Matthew, there's something about Emma. We need to talk. Now. The weight of her words settled over me like a storm cloud erupting with unrelenting thunder. I turned my gaze back to Matthew, questions swirling in my mind, but the warmth of what had been was now overshadowed by a new urgency. Lily, wait. Matthew called after me, but I was already rushing toward the waiting room, propelled by the instinct to protect my daughter. Alexander stood near the door, worry etched across his face. What happened? Sarah knows something about Emma. I could hear the panic in my voice, and I could feel it rising in me like a roaring fire. What if something is wrong? What if Matthew's not the only complication we face? As I raced to Sarah, I felt the weight of unresolved feelings pressing down on my heart. The confrontation with Matthew was only the beginning. New challenges loomed ahead, like shadows stretching into the light, each unfurling revelation promising to twist the knife deeper into my already tangled existence. But as I reached Sarah, something shifted in the air. The glimmer of hope that flickered deep within me fought against the ever-tightening grip of fear, a contradiction that only brought more uncertainty. Lily, we need to discuss what I found, Sarah urged, her hand gripping my arm tightly. It's urgent. And at that moment, the door of possibility swung wide open, waiting for me to step through, but the choice ahead felt more daunting than ever. As I stood there, the uncertainty gnawed at my insides, and I knew we were just beginning to uncover the truth that would shape our futures. The waiting room was a blur of muted colors and anxious glances, each person encapsulated in their private worlds, just as I was immersed in my own turmoil. Sarah's grip on my arm tightened, grounding me amidst the rising tide of my fear. I could see the worry lacing her brow, and it mirrored the shaking uncertainty within me. What did you find? I asked, my voice a mere whisper, barely holding back the panic threatening to burst forth. What's wrong with Emma? Let's sit down for a moment, Sarah urged, leading me to a quiet corner of the room. I felt the weight of hundreds of eyes upon us, the weight of every heartbreak, every revelation, every unspoken fear stretching long into the corners of my mind. Once seated, Sarah took a deep breath, her expression grave. I overheard a conversation earlier, she began, her delicate fingers intertwining in her lap. There are concerns about Emma's health, something unusual, something that requires further tests. My stomach dropped. What do you mean unusual? There are signs that could indicate she has some genetic predispositions, conditions that might not have been detected during her regular screenings. The doctors want to run more tests. Each word was like an arrow piercing straight through me, igniting a wildfire of fear. I pressed my palm against my mouth, trying to stifle the surge of emotions that clawed at my throat. No. Is there something I should know? Why could it be genetic? Is it? I choked on the words, fear knitting itself tightly into my heart. What if it was a legacy from Matthew that I hadn't known about? Lily, I don't want to jump to conclusions, Sarah said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. We need more information. But I had to tell you. You have to be prepared in case it's something serious. Prepared for what? I cried, my frantic pulse pounding in my ears. Prepared for the worst. I can't lose her. I can't. My voice broke like glass. I can't go through that pain again. Sarah's eyes softened with understanding, and I could see in her gaze the reflection of my own fear. We're going to find out more, I promise. You're not alone in this. Just breathe. I nodded, but my thoughts spiraled like leaves caught in a storm. Somewhere amidst my panic, a flicker of something warm began to stir. It was the unwavering support of my friend, the feeling of not having to shoulder this burden alone. But in the shadow of that warmth loomed the specter of impending truths that could shatter my entire world. Just as I began to regain my composure, I heard the door to the waiting room creak open again. My heart surged as I recognized Alexander stepping inside. His expression was taut, his mouth set in a grim line. Lily, he called softly, his voice cutting sharply through the tension. The doctor wants to see you. My breath hitched in my throat. What now? I shot to my feet, clutching Sarah's hand as if it were a lifeline. What did they say? Is it about Emma? Alexander's eyes flickered between us, heavy with the weight of untold news. They need to talk to you about the test results and about Matthew. Matthew? The name sent a jolt through me. What more could there possibly be? Yes. He isn't the only one who has information that could change everything for you. You need to hear this, now. Against my better judgment, I felt the threads of dread and anticipation intertwine, pulling me closer to a reckoning I couldn't escape. My heart thundered wildly as I glanced at Sarah, who nodded knowingly, her eyes filled with the urgency of the moment. Together, we followed Alexander toward the doctor's office, each step weighted with anxiety, every heartbeat echoing the uncertainty of what lay ahead. My mind raced with the thought of Emma, her future, of what this revelation might mean, the possibility that my greatest love might be threatened again. But as we reached the door, I hesitated, an icy grip tightening around my chest. I need to be strong for her, I murmured, half to myself. You are strong, Lily. Well, face this together, Alexander reassured me, placing a steadying hand on my back. There was a comforting sincerity in his voice, yet beneath it, I detected an unspoken concern. One I couldn't afford to ignore. As I stepped into the room, a swarm of questions loomed before me, but they paled in comparison to the pulse of fear that seeped into the marrow of my bones. The doctor sat behind the desk, reviewing a file with a furrowed brow. My breath quickened as he looked up, catching my gaze with an intensity that made my heart race. "Lily, we need to discuss the findings regarding Emma." And what Matthew has revealed. Those words hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and ominous, uncertainty crackling around the edges. In that moment, I knew the path ahead would be fraught with demanding choices, pulled by the strings of destiny, and that the confrontation with both Matthew's past that haunted me and Emma's uncertain future would intertwine in ways I could never have anticipated. The truth was coming for us all, and as I prepared to listen, I sensed the ground shivering beneath my feet. The air in the doctor's office felt thick and charged, as if every molecule was holding its breath. The doctor shifted, clasping his hands on the desk and regarding me with a mix of empathy and professional detachment that only intensified my pulse. "I understand this is difficult, but we need clarity on certain family medical histories to better help Emma." I swallowed hard, a storm of emotions spiraling through me. What does Matthew have to do with any of this? Is it about his past? Matthew's family has genetic conditions documented in their medical history, the doctor explained, his gaze steady yet gentle. Some of these conditions can have significant implications for Emma, which is why we need to discuss them further. I felt the air getting sucked out of the room, an icy finger tracing down my spine. Is there anything specific that might put her at risk? My instinct screamed at me, pushing me to prepare for the worst. I clung to Sarah's hand, her presence an anchor in the swirling chaos inside me. "Potential blood disorders," the doctor replied, each word deliberate, as if wrapping the truth in layers of caution. There could be hereditary issues related to both sides of her lineage, issues we'll need to assess through genetic testing. I took a step back, my heart thundering as my mind conjured images of Emma drifting toward a future marked by uncertainty, the same haunting specter I had fought against for so long. But Matthew doesn't even know about all this, does he? There are things he's aware of based on his family's history. But some pieces might be missing, the doctor said softly, his voice laced with understanding of how heavy this news was. "My God," I breathed. "We've been walking through this darkness, not realizing how deep it went. Why hasn't he told me?" The revelation left me grappling for coherence. Did he not trust me enough? Or was he simply ashamed of the hidden wounds his past bore? "I can't imagine the weight this has for you," the doctor said, giving me a moment to pull myself together. "But it's essential you have a conversation with Matthew soon, especially considering how this affects Emma. Transparency is key in navigating this." Just then, the door creaked open, and in rushed a nurse with a handful of papers. "Doctor, we need these results as well," she said, her face flushed, slightly out of breath. It was as if time warped, and between the two of us was the unbearable suspense of secrets yet to unfold. "Thank you," he replied, taking the papers with a nod. I caught my breath, watching the nurse. There was something in her eyes, a flicker of warmth amidst the sterile environment, which gave me a modicum of comfort. "Lily," the doctor continued, "I want you to remember that knowing is the first step to understanding and confronting any issues." Sarah leaned in, her expression fierce. "You're not alone in this, Lily. You have me, and we'll navigate whatever comes together." Her words gave me a glimmer of hope, but my heart ached at the thought that all of Emma's future could be painted by strokes of worry and concern. The doctor glanced at his watch, and my stomach twisted. "That said, I need you to think seriously about talking to Matthew. Understand his perspective. His family history may hold keys to Emma's health that need unlocking. The sooner, the better." My heart sank like a stone. Talking to Matthew now felt monumental, a confrontation shrouded in doubt, the echo of unanswered questions ringing loudly in my ears. I felt suspended in a sea of anxiety and dread. As we left the office, my thoughts raced ahead, crossing valleys of despair and rays of cautious hope. Could I really confront him, or would this push us farther apart? Stepping out into the corridor, I was aware of every hurried step on the linoleum floor, every cough, every distant whisper blending into a symphony of anxiety. Lily, are you okay? Sarah asked gently, her concern palpable. I nodded, though inside, I was clenching my fists to contain the welling up of tears that we paused in the waiting room, a cafe-style space dotted with worried families all clinging to their own threads of hope. My phone vibrated in my pocket, breaking the silence like thunder. It was a message from Matthew. Can we talk later? I need to tell you something important. My heart lurched, a mix of anticipation and dread flooding me. What could possibly be more important than what we were already facing? Are you going to reply? Sarah asked, glancing at the phone's screen. Yes. But part of me is afraid of what he'll say. And part of me doesn't want to know. My fingers hovered over the screen, uncertainty wrapped tightly around my fingertips, the moment hung heavy between us, the weight of a decision that could pivot our lives into realms of understanding or further heartbreak. As I pressed my lips together and finally began typing, the truth loomed closer yet farther away in a way that felt like peering into a dark abyss, where answers hid behind shadows, waiting to leap out with the claw of revelation. Just as I hit send, another ripple of energy surged through the air, and I turned to see Alexander enter the waiting room, his face as pale as a sheet. There was something urgent in his eyes, a dawning realization that rushed to meet the premonition growing within me. Lily, he breathed, his voice strained. You need to hear this, and soon. There's more than just health risks we need to discuss. The words, fragile yet weighted with urgency, danced at the edge of my understanding. I felt the abyss opening beneath me, and whatever was waiting there was inching closer, ready to pull me down into deeper depths of revelation. The stark fluorescent lights overhead buzzed, casting an unforgiving glow over Alexander's anxious features. My heart raced back into a state of urgency, and the walls of the waiting room seemed to close in without mercy. What do you mean? I whispered, my voice barely a quiver above the din of muted conversations and the shuffle of anxious family members. There's information about Matthew that I overheard, he insisted, his brow furrowing with concern. It's not just about Emma's health. It's something bigger, something that could change everything. Sarah's hand found mine, squeezing it tightly as if to ground us both amid the whirlwind around us. I felt a surge of adrenaline, mingling with dread and curiosity, swirling fiercely inside. Part of me wanted to throw caution to the wind, demand each detail, push Alexander for clarity. But the other part urged restraint, recognizing the weight of words hung heavily in the air. Can we talk somewhere private? I suggested, glancing around the crowded room, suddenly feeling exposed and vulnerable. Good idea, Alexander nodded, relief washing over his features. Follow me. We stepped down a narrow corridor, away from the cacophony, with only the distant beeping of machines echoing in the background. I could feel Sarah's presence closely following, like a steadfast shield against the uncertainties flooding my mind. We found an empty consultation room. I closed the door behind us, and tension thickened the air in an almost tangible way. Alexander leaned against the desk, his hands braced on the edges as he searched my gaze with an urgency that caught me off guard. What I heard worries me, he began, the gravity of his tone forcing me to focus entirely on him. Matthew was talking to someone, a woman, at the cafe before we discovered Emma's test results. She mentioned his family and some complications regarding financial matters. Financial matters? I echoed, trying to piece together the implications of his words. What does that have to do with any of this? There's more, Lily. She said something about a trust fund and implications of possibly losing it if certain conditions weren't met. And then there was mention of secrets, family dispute stuff that leaves a shadow. I had to let you know. If he's hiding something like that, a chill ran down my spine. My instincts blared their warning, a harsh choir urging me to tread carefully. So you're saying he might be hiding significant information about not just his past, but his family's present situation because of issues tied to money? The notion made my heart sink lower, layers of betrayal twisting into the hesitant tendrils of my thoughts. Exactly. It could affect everything, Emma, your future together. I know you want the truth, but what if he's been trying to protect you? Protect me. The phrase felt heavy, like a stone lodged in my throat. My emotions felt like an unruly fire, sparking both anger and despair. Was I just another piece in his elaborate game, one crafted to keep me happily oblivious while the storm brewed behind us? Why wouldn't he just tell me? I asked, my resolve crumbling further. Why let me walk this path without a lantern in the dark? Alexander's eyes softened, his empathy palpable as he watched me spiral through the cascade of doubts and fears. Sometimes people think they are protecting us by hiding the truth. They believe it's a burden we can't bear. But the longer it takes to reveal the truth, the more we risk losing our grip on what's real. Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket, jolting me back to the moment. The sound was curious. I caught her glancing at the screen. "It's Matthew," she said, a mix of trepidation and resolve dancing across her face. "He wants to know where you are." "Lily, you need to respond that I can't face him yet," I said, panic rising again. "Not like this. I'm not ready," but as I watched Sarah's expression shift, her concern rapidly morphing into something sharper, I knew I couldn't put off this conversation any longer. I needed to confront him, but I felt like a ship lost at sea, the turbulent waves of truth and betrayal crashing against the hull. "Okay," I said, forcing my voice to steady. "I'll tell him we're in the consultation room. It's time we had an honest conversation." With a flick of her thumb, she sent a quick message, and the ever-present ticking in my heart amplified as I realized this could either be a moment of reckoning or a plunge deeper into chaos, a pivot point in our lives I could never have imagined. Minutes seemed to stretch infinitely as I waited, my hands resting uneasily in my lap. The air was thick with anticipation, murmurs of fear whispering through my mind like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. The door creaked open, and Matthew stepped in, his face a mixture of relief and concern that quickly morphed into shock upon seeing Alexander. "What's going on?" he demanded, his gaze shifting between us as he registered the tension that I could feel the moment freeze, a fragile bubble on the edge of bursting. "We need to talk, Matt," I said, forcing the words out. But just as I prepared to unfurl the torrent of emotions waiting to be released, a harried nurse burst through the door, her demeanor frantic. "Excuse me," she gasped, beads of sweat glistening on her forehead. "You need to come back to the main lobby. There's been an incident, and it involves Emma." The room tilted on its axis, and my world fractured in a heartbeat. The uncharted territory of dread spread its wings, the ominous nature of what she'd said loomed like a dark cloud, threatening to rain down peril into our fragile lives. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, drowning out the frantic whispers around me. The nurse's words hung in the air like a guillotine, ready to slice my remaining composure into pieces. I felt a mixture of confusion and terror wash over me. "What do you mean, an incident?" I managed to croak out, my voice trembling as I grasped for clarity. "Please," the nurse urged, her eyes wide and intense. "It's urgent. I can't provide details here, but you need to come right away." Without waiting for another moment to approach, I abandoned the fragile conversation we had begun. Every uncertainty, every simmering emotion about Matthew, faded away into the recesses of my mind, eclipsed by an overwhelming instinct to protect Emma. I sprinted down the corridor, my legs moving on autopilot, the urgency of the situation propelling me forward as I caught sight of Sarah and Alexander trailing behind me. "Lily, wait." Matthew called after me, urgency echoing in his tone, but I didn't look back. I couldn't afford to. My daughter's well-being eclipsed everything, blanketing me in a tidal wave of fear I had yet to fully confront. As I reached the main lobby, the bright lights overhead felt blinding, the rush of medical staff creating a whirlpool of chaos around me. My breath hitched as memory flashed before my eyes of Emma's smile, of her laughter, of her tiny fingers wrapped around mine. I burst through the entrance to find several nurses gathered, their expressions morphing into masks of concern, trying to navigate a whirl of questions and reactions. "Where is she? Where's Emma?" I cried, desperation clawing at my throat as I scanned the frantic activity around me. Emma had been for the entire moment my world, my reason to fight. My heart raced. There was a slight incident during one of the tests, a doctor finally stepped forward, an unfamiliar face, yet one that carried an aura of calm amidst the fray. But there's no need to panic. She is being evaluated, and we will ensure she is safe. Right now, we just need to assess her condition. Assess. What does that mean? I was teetering on the edge of reason, my entire being filled with apprehension. I felt as though I were about to plunge into an abyss, one where danger lurked unseen, the very ground beneath me vanishing. Emma had a reaction, the doctor explained, his voice soothing but firm. We believed it was just routine, but she exhibited some signs of distress when they attempted the blood work. We are monitoring her closely and will keep you informed. The weight bearing down on my chest lightened slightly, yet the tendrils of fear still stretched around my heart. How could something I'd anticipated like routine tests turn into something so frighteningly unpredictable? Can I see her? I asked, determination flooding my veins despite the growing panic. He nodded, gesturing for me to follow. With every step, I focused on Emma's face, the sweet smile that always lit up my darkest days. Nothing could overshadow that light. I needed to protect it at all costs. As we pushed through the hallway and entered a small room, my heart stuttered as I laid eyes on my little girl. Emma lay on a hospital bed, a small bandage wrapped around her arm, and the contrast of her tiny frame against the stark whiteness of the sheets felt almost surreal. Her big brown eyes fluttered open, and a small whimper escaped her lips, the kind that pierced straight through to my soul. "Mama?" she called weakly, and suddenly, all the chaos fell away. "Baby, I'm right here." I rushed to her side, gripping her small hand, my heart swelling with a mix of relief and fear. "I'm so sorry you're scared." "I'm here." As I stroked her hair, soothing her as best I could, I briefly felt movement behind me. Matthew had entered, his anxious expression almost breaking me again. But in that moment, I needed to be strong for Emma. I couldn't let the ghosts of our tumultuous past influence this moment. "Lily," he began, his voice trembling. "Not now, Matt," I interrupted sharply, not ready to dive into the whirlwind of unresolved emotions. "She needs me, and that's all that matters right now." Emma squeezed my hand, her little fingers trailing over my palm, igniting a warmth in me that fought back the dread. "Mama, I don't feel good," she whispered, her voice small and fragile. "I know, sweetheart," I replied, choking on the fear that threatened to rise. "But they're going to help you. I promise. Just hold on tight." In that sacred space, time ceased to exist, every second stretching into eternity as I clung to my daughter. Suddenly, my world felt narrowed down. There was only Emma and the enveloping need to protect her. "It's okay, Emma. You're going to be okay," I repeated, finding solace and strength in the comforting rhythm of my own words. Yet, through that warmth, the reality of Matthew's presence weighed heavily, threatening to pull me apart. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the doctor returned, his expression more relaxed. "She's stable," he said. "We're going to monitor her and run a few more tests to ensure everything's alright, but it looks like the reaction was likely a minor one." Relief washed over me, a cleansing tide that momentarily eased the anxiety coursing through my veins. I turned to Matthew, who stood with his hands clenched, worry etched deeply across his features. "You should know," he whispered, trembling himself. "I didn't think the tests could go this way." "Stop," I said firmly, meeting his anxious gaze. "This isn't the time. One crisis at a time, please." Emma needed me focused, not tangled in the chaos of feelings that Matthew ignited within me. I stayed by Emma's side, holding her hand until she drifted off again, comforted by my presence. As her eyelashes fluttered closed, I couldn't help but gaze at Matthew, whose face was wrought with confusion, pain mingling with an undercurrent of something deeper, perhaps regret, perhaps longing. Neither of us spoke, yet I could feel the complicated ties existing between us stretching taut, threatening to snap under the pressure. I instinctively wanted to turn away, to bury myself in the role of motel shield for my daughter. Yet, even as I kept my gaze fixed on Emma, I couldn't shake the sensation of unresolved tension surrounding us like a dark cloud. Finally, once Emma was asleep and the weight of exhaustion seeped into my bones, I made my decision. A heart still tethered to Emma's fragile spirit could reach forward to confront the man who had once held my trust and shattered it. "Matthew," I finally said, rising to confront him. "We need to talk now." The words came with a weight I hadn't anticipated, yet there was a flicker of courage igniting deep within. I took a shaky breath, steadying myself for this delicate, chaotic confrontation, a new chapter unfolding against the backdrop of uncertainty and fear. I need to understand why you didn't tell me the truth about your past. About Emma. What else are you hiding? His eyes widened, but the remorse flickered openly across his face. Lily, I was afraid. Afraid you'd think I was weak or undeserving of being a father. I thought pushing you away would protect you. That's not how this works. Protecting me means being honest, facing what's real. My voice grew steadier, each syllable layered with the fierceness of a mother. You have to understand that if you're going to be in her life, it must be as a partner, not just a father. You don't get to regress into shadows. The shadows of our past swirled around us, teasing at old wounds, yet in that moment while Emma rested so sweetly I felt myself stepping forward into the light of clarity. Could we truly carve a path anew, free from harsh reflections of the past? As soon as I knew Emma was at risk he began, but I interrupted him. No more excuses, I said, my voice firm. No more secrets. I looked him directly in the eye, wanting him to see the resolve burning within me. If we're going to move forward at all, it has to be built on truth. On courage and, potentially, I paused, a raw gulp escaping, forgiveness. In that moment, I accepted the fickle nature of life, of love intertwined with pain, and realized that seeing him for who he was rather than who he had been was my passage towards closure. Together we could navigate the murky waters of our shared past while fighting for the vibrant future Emma so deserved. Matthew nodded, the flickering embers of humility igniting in his eyes, acknowledging the chance offered. I'll do better, I promise, he said firmly, determination lacing his voice as he stepped closer. No more hiding, then let's acknowledge what we've faced and prepare to face the storm ahead. I took a deep breath, feeling the shadows lighten, the possibility of building anew offering a gentle warmth amidst the darkness. As I finally let down some of the walls I had erected, an undeniable truth emerged in that unexpected moment, a heavily worn path towards forgiveness, intertwined with the hope of a tomorrow that might hold light. Just as I felt the tentative threads of unity weave between us, the door swung open, revealing Alexander, his expression one of encouraging warmth, glancing between us. Is everything all right? He asked, his brow lifting slightly. I thought I heard raised voices. It's fine, I replied, finding a new steadiness as I clasped Emma's small hand once more, ready to protect and fight for our future. But there are some new paths we need to carve out. With that potent awareness enveloping us like a gentle embrace, perhaps both Matthew and I stood at the edge of a newfound understanding, not only of each other but of the grace and strength that comes with vulnerability and the promise of tomorrow. Turning to Emma, I brought my forehead to hers, feeling peace wash over me completely. I looked into the depths of her dreams and whispered, "We're going to be okay," feeling the heartbeat of our unbreakable bond, resonating through the soft silence. Perhaps love could again eclipse the shadows and guide us toward a joyful dawn, a new chapter filled with both courage and connection, and as I held my daughter close, I felt a resurgence of hope unfurl like petals from a flower in bloom, spilling warmth into the frigid winter ground. While the path ahead would undoubtedly unfold into uncharted territory, it was a journey worth taking, spectacularly tinged with both uncertainty and love, a winding road wrapping around the essence of both motherhood and healing. Sometimes, it's in that dance of light and shadow where we uncover the truest parts of ourselves, the heart, alive and kicking, beat after beat, holding on to the radiance of that fragile yet powerful bond.